fast, but compared to the last two, the lines of your movements are painfully easy to predict.
Hello everybody, MegaZard here. I'm back at it again to give y'all another very exciting My Hero Academia episode review, and this time I'm going to be reviewing episode 75, Unforeseen Hope. And if you haven't already checked out my episode 74 review over My Hero Academia, you can go ahead and click that card in the corner and check that video out, and then come back and watch this one though. But I gotta say, for this episode, oh shoot, oh my goodness sakes, gracious sakes alive. Because this one, man, if you thought you saw some action and you thought you saw yourself enough blood and stuff and you thought it couldn't possibly get any crazier than this, then oh shoot, then forget what you just thought about in your mind, ball it up and throw it in the trash can, because man, y'all, oh shoot. Okay, so there was just a whole crap ton of stuff within this episode though, and the stakes were high, there was a high sense of action, and oh, good gracious sakes alive, man, it's just a lot to take in though, but I'm just going to have to break it down one step at a time for this review though. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive straight up into this episode review of My Hero Academia. So starting off at the very beginning of the episode, we don't actually pick up from like the last tail ending moments of where the previous episode ended though, but we actually get to start a few minutes back in the past, and we basically get to see, you know, all the heroes and stuff, and they basically managed to, you know, capture Iranaka based upon the events of the last episode, and they were just kind of breaking down and discussing like, hey, you know, Iranaka, hey, can you find a way to make the hallways go back to normal, because that dude tore that whole entire mess up, like that whole hallway was up in shambles and stuff like that. And you know, and since his quirk basically wore off, they basically knew that, hey, Iranaka's not going to be a threat no more, because you know that was basically an enhancing drug, so that wasn't naturally like his powers. He could only usually kind of control stuff and matter that's like about the size of a refrigerator though. But they also, you know, pointed out and said, you know what, the League of Villains are also associated with the Yakuza group as well, though. So we also got to take precautions on that, though. And then Izuku started reflecting back and saying, you know what, hey, you know what, Eraserhead basically told me, said, hey, if there's a League of Villains members associated with this Yakuza, hey, you know what, he's going to be like, all right, like he's going to basically act like, coach, I'm going to pull you out of this game. No, and then, but before it could even possibly even come down to that and having Eraserhead basically make that call, Rockjaw reminded everyone that, hey, they can basically leave, you know, the League of Villains and whatever else they got planned, whatever, with this whole entire scenario, they can leave that to the cops. But they needed to push on and not forget their main priority is saving Eri. And they came too far now. Like, if you thought back to all the different sacrifices, like with Dragon Lady Ryuchu and her squad, you know, taking care of the Yakuza members that basically greeted them at the front door and they came out swinging during that moment. Or if you think about Red Riot along with Fat Gum, and they basically had to make that sacrifice for Izuku and the rest of the crew to be able to push further and actually get deeper within the Yakuza stronghold. So he just reminded everybody, hey, we can't lose sight of the goal at hand. We still need to save Eri, so we got to do everything we can to keep pushing forward. And he basically said, hey, look, I can look over Iranaka, you know, based upon the damage that Toga did to me. I ain't going anywhere anytime soon. So you know what, I'll take care of him. Y'all keep going on ahead. And basically, you know, and then Izuku and them just rushed off after that. And Toga and Twice were happened to be watching from above, and they basically saw Izuku kind of in their group, you know, just, you know, moving on to the next area though. And then two of them started thinking of a scheme, and you know, Twice started to whisper into Toga's ear, and she was like, oh, you know what, I like that. And she basically kind of summed up and said, you know what, with the heroes and the Yakuza going at it, there's going to be potentially like a lot of bloodshed, and you know, both of the two sides are going to wind up beating each other up so much. So it seems like both of it seems like, you know, both of them could be able to seize the moment, so to say, and they basically had maybe sort of kind of scheme that they might be planning out. So, you know, if both sides take a beating or whatever, though, maybe they can pull something quick and be able to capitalize off of the stuff that that the Yakuza members were possibly doing. Like, so to say, maybe, you know, they made that little drug or whatever, though, and Overhaul happens to fail because Izuku and the rest of the game managed to beat Overhaul, but maybe, you know, everybody's so beaten up and torn down in their state that, you know what, they come in, swoop in, and take those drug bullets to use within their own evil schemes like that. At least that's just like one of my little predictions, though. But, you know, they were just kind of coming up with a scheme within that scenario, though. And then it was after this moment where Izuku came in rushing and busting down the door when Togeda was at his worst, and that dude came in swinging, came in there punching Overhaul like that, and I was like, oh shoot, so Izuku really going into it, though. And immediately Sir Night immediately rushed over to Togeda's and Eri's side, and he immediately kind of held them close, and he was just reflecting back on it and say, hey, you know what, you did a really good job, Togeda, in managing to protect Eri and slowing down Overhaul all this time. And immediately Eraserhead, you know, used his quirk in order to stop Overhaul from being able to use his quirk. So it was both of those two basically rushing in to, you know, finish off Overhaul, because, you know, with his quirk not activated, all it takes is like a couple good hits on the head or whatever, though. They would have knocked that dude out unconscious, and it would have been checkmate, game over or whatever, though. But it was in this moment where both of those two were rushing in, where Overhaul immediately called out to one of his other Yakuza members that still happened to be knocked out. It was one of the first members that Togeda actually managed to knock out and take care of, though. But he called Chrono that, you know, finally it's time for you to wake up and do something or whatever, though. Immediately he shoots this thing that came out of his head, and immediately Eraserhead noticed that, hey, something was off, and he pushed Izuku out of the way, but he managed to get partially sliced by it. And it was in this moment where that quirk started to play a little bit of an effect on him, and then slowly but surely, you know, Eraserhead slowly closed his eye, and he was like, and then Overhaul knew at this moment, he was like, okay, the second that happened, boom, I'm gonna be able to use my quirk again. Izuku was trying to rush in and try to prevent him from using his quirk, or, you know, delivering him that final blow, but Eraserhead couldn't hold on, and then boom, he activated his quirk and shot all of those stone pillars up in the air, though. And it was at this moment where Chrono, his body kind of fell down right in front of Overhaul, and he noticed, and then he was like, you know what, hey, you've been working for me all this time. I know that, you know, you will want the best for me, so I know that your death will not go in vain. And he put his hand on him, and all of a sudden, you got to see all this kind of purple stuff kind of shooting up around him, kind of swirling around him or whatever, though. And his body starts taking like a weird mutation, kind of like an evolution or whatever, though. And I don't know what this dude's quirk is crazy, though. The matter of fact that he can incorporate other matter into his own body. So he basically kind of fused Chrono's body with his own body as well, and throughout this process, it actually managed to help his body kind of recover, though. So that was just crazy in itself to kind of see all of that stuff happen, though. But then immediately within the floor below, we can see that, you know, there was like a hole busted up, and then we get to see Eraserhead on the ground, and there's Chrono that was like right above him, and he pierced him again with the thing that was coming from his head, though. But when he takes that mask off, we figure out that that thing that pierced him was actually a piece of his hair. And basically with his quirk is called Chronostasis, and one strike from his hair will basically slow anybody's movements down to a crawl. So it was, you know, thanks to him that it slowed down Eraserhead's movements, and that was the reason why, you know, he couldn't prevent himself from not blinking, and, you know, that's how Overhaul managed to reactivate his powers or whatever, though. But it was in this moment where they were taken away from the heat of the action, where Chrono basically laid out some little information and stuff that we didn't know. And Eri is actually the Hisakai's boss's granddaughter. So that's the connection with Eri and the whole Yakuza group as a whole. So basically Overhaul is using the boss's granddaughter to be able to make these bullets and trying to accomplish his goals like that. And that's what's pretty sickening sickening in itself though. And the reason why they separated Eraserhead from, you know, the rest of them that were fighting upstairs was the fact of the matter that, you know, Eraserhead's quirk is basically a quirk eliminating kind of power. So because of that, you know, Overhaul has, you know, he has use for that, and he basically wants to see if he can kind of capitalize off of his quirk as well to be able to accomplish his goals though. So he sees value in Eraserhead. So he wasn't going to kill him, but, you know, everybody else that was, you know, blocking his path in terms of his goals, yeah, he was going to try to kill and eliminate them. So anyway, moving back upstairs though, he basically, Overhaul's just kind of going through some of the moments and stuff where he started kind of spilling out some of the beans and saying, you know what, hey, y'all didn't get in my way, you didn't disturb me or nothing like that. Hey, if you didn't manage to push yourself too far, Togeda, you never have to lose your power. And it was in this moment where he explained that yes, Togeda did lose his power permanently, so that meant that the drug that they used, it was a success in terms of permanently eliminating a person's quirk. And then it was at this moment where he was basically about to rush in and try to, you know, attack Tsunade, who was basically protecting Togeda and Eri. And then all of a sudden you see Izuku come up in here, slicing a piece of rock, grabbing that piece of rock, and then jamming it down and attacking Overhaul with it, which was actually pretty crazy in itself though. And it was thanks to his steel boots, thank goodness, that none of those concrete pillars were able to kind of pierce his body, at least leading all the way up to this moment. And then this is where Tsunade said, you know what, in this tag team, hey, I'm about to tag you out, and I'm about to tag myself up in. So he says, hey, you know what, you play the defense and protect Lemillion as well as Eri, and you know what, I'll play the offense and I'll go after Overhaul though. And then Overhaul was basically saying, hey, look man, you essentially messed my boy up. You know what, this dude was doing so much, he had so much to look forward to, and then you come over here and take this man power. Oh heck no, I'm about to square up against you now. And he was basically kind of reflecting back and saying, you know what, hey, we got to see like a brief little flashback scene of how Tsunade was basically talking about to Togeda and saying, hey, you know what, use your battle experience, and from your battle experience, even though you may not know too much about being able to anticipate a person's movement, if you go back in the past and reflect back on previous fights that you might have had, you can start, you know, using those certain techniques and be able to anticipate what your other enemy movements may be though. And that's how Tsunade was kind of able to maneuver around, for the most part, at least for the first half of this battle though. He was able to outmaneuver Overhaul to an extent, and was able to basically avoid any kind of contact with him, because, you know, if he managed to contact the dude directly, you know, that was game over that way though. But he also had those spear pillars as well that he also avoided as well though. But then we get to see a flashback scene with Tsunade, and he was talking to Gran Torino, and he was talking about, you know, the use of his quirk, and he was like, you know what, was it me using my quirk to see into like All Might's future? Was that the reason why that, you know what, I actually saw a bad future, and there's nothing I can really do about it, because all the times he basically used his oversight quirk, you know, he was never able to change the destiny of whatever he saw. And he thought that, you know what, basically in a way was his quirk sort of kind of like a curse, because it's like almost anytime he tries to do something with it, for the most part, he basically sees people that get hurt or potentially may have the potential of dying at some point. And he was like, you know what, is it really even good to kind of use my quirk though? But Gran Torino's like, man, you're overthinking it. You know, things are gonna happen in life or whatever though, but you can't let this really get to you. Find good ways to be able to use it though. And then it was at this moment where it was at this moment where Tsunade basically established and said, you know what, I'm not gonna use my quirk anymore in terms of seeing super far down into the future of a person's future. And basically it was at this moment where he established that, you know what, I'm only gonna see partially into the future, just enough. And this is the reason why, you know, we get to see Tsunade only use his quirk and only knows a small little bit into the future, because he never wants to know almost everything that happens out. And then, you know, that can either be a blessing and a curse in itself, knowing it, you know, both ways or whatever way you like to think about it, though. But that's the reason why Sir Night-Eye has complications with his quirk. It was just, you know, really due to the events that he basically saw play out with All Might, though. And then we get to see Izuku, and he was talking to Togeda and Eri and saying that, hey, you know what, while these two are fighting and whatever though, hey, let's take this time and opportunity while he's basically fending off Overhaul. Hey, let's go ahead and escape and get, you know, Eri to safety though. But we get to see the sheer amount of fear that's over Eri's face, and how, you know, how she just wasn't able to comprehend all this stuff that was going around. She was like, she was just constantly thinking back on Overhaul's words and saying, you know what, no matter who you come across with, people are always getting hurt because you're being like disobedient, you're not kind of following my ways, and you're trying to, you know, you're not basically listening to me. And it's when you don't listen to me, people actually get hurt. And we get to see this torment on Eri's face, which is just downright brutal, just sitting there and watching all of this stuff play out though. And then all of a sudden we get to see Sir Night-Eye, and he was stabbed. Not just stabbed once, but he got stabbed like through the back, through the chest, and also on his leg. And I was like, oh shoot. And it was at this moment where like my heart sank. I was like, dang. I was like, I thought Togeda getting pierced was pretty bad, but this dude had it a whole lot worse. Like, it was like a stake, like just like literally like just driven through his body. And that dude was not moving at all. Like, he was just on that thing. And it was at those, like, his final few moments or whatever, though, he was looking and using his quirk to actually look even further on beyond the future, normally a lot further than what he normally does. And he was like, can I see a future where I can see Togeda as well as Izuku as well as Eri be able to make it out of here alive, unharmed, and live to fight and see another day? But then all he saw was a side-scrolling thing where he saw nothing but blood gushing in front of Izuku, and then you got to see a tear into what seemed to be his quirk, and then he couldn't see anything else beyond that. And that sort of kind of depressed him in that moment though. But then it was at this moment where Izuku said, you know what, forget the future and all this stuff. Hey, even though you might have saw a bad future or whatever though, Sir Night-Eye, but even if it's bad, despite all of this, even though you might say that I might not win, I can't just sit down on the bench and not do anything like this. Like, I am gonna do something about it, and by golly, I am gonna do it. And it was at this moment where he said, you know what, I'm gonna use 20% of my power. And then Overhaul was like, wait a minute, was this kid not using all of his power at first? And goodness, and his power started to get to him so much that, you know, he has like that sort of kind of protection kind of armor on some of his arms, you know, due to the fact that how much he kind of crushed him whenever he used his arms to fight in combat though. The power was starting to get to him so much that, you know, the right arm just busted out. And then he was like, you know what, I gotta end this stuff quickly, because you know what, using this much of my power, it's making my parts of my body ache, but I gotta end it real swiftly. If I can manage to get one hit on his head like this, I might be able to knock him out unconscious before he can actually be able to repair parts of his body, because he can just, you know, regenerate himself with his quirk or whatever though. But unfortunately, he managed to miss, and then Overhaul uses his quirk, and then we get to see those pillars pop out once again though. And then all of a sudden we see a bunch of blood just flow over Izuku's face. Now we have a little scene change though, and we get to see Togeda walking down the hallway with Eri, and he's just barely limping, just barely making it by, and we're just seeing him just struggle throughout this state. And it was like, dang, it was just really hard. And he was reflecting back on that sacrifice that Sir Night-Eye made. He's like, you know what, I got to continue on the mission. I might be quirkless though, but I am not helpless though. And he was like, hey Eri, hide, do something, just try to escape here, hide, you know what, leave this in our hands. There were so many people that made sacrifices for you. You gotta manage to get out of here though. But it was at this moment where Overhaul started to use the quirk that he absorbed from the other dude, and said, he started to call out to Eri, say, Eri, you know what? You've been disobedient. People have been getting hurt again. You better make your way back on over here though. And it just really got to Eri, and then she started to walk back to the main scene where they're fighting at though. And then it was at this moment where Izuku's like, hey, no, Eri, you gotta get away with here. You gotta get away from here. You gotta reunite with Togeda and, you know, try to get out of here. You know what? Leave this mess to me, though. But then it was at this moment where, you know, she was just kind of petrified, and she was like, I can't do nothing. Like, all these people are hurt. She was like, you know what? I listened to you. Hey, if I go back to you, will you be able to heal everybody and, you know, repair them back to normal or whatever, though? And then it was at this moment where Overhaul was just talking to Izuku and saying, you know what? She didn't even need your help. She didn't even need your help. And you know what? That last little flame of hope went out whenever Togeda basically took that beating. There's nothing else that you can basically do, though. And you know what? And then Izuku started to stand up and he's like, you know what? I don't care what you say. I don't care how the future may look. I don't care how dire and how bad the situation may look, though. But I'm gonna find a way to surpass my limits, and gosh darn it, I am gonna save Eri, even if it's my last will. And he basically sucked in all the courage he had, and he was about to go head to head with Overhaul in one last desperate attempt to be able to save Eri, though. But all of a sudden, we get to see the whole entire floor just break down right above from the ceiling, and then a whole bunch of people just started crashing down. We got to see Dragon Lady Ryuchu, we got to see Ochako, and we got to see Sue just busting down with that big old other Yakuza member that was the first one that got introduced by whenever they were about to raid the palace of the Yakuza. And that's essentially where the episode ended, though. But gosh darn, they jammed a lot within these like 22-ish minutes of this episode, though. And it was a good joy to watch. And gosh, we got some background history with Sonata and stuff, some touching moments, some depressing moments of how Togeda basically lost his quirk, you know, fighting Overhaul and stuff like this, and see Izuku managing to kind of get in there, get some blows, get some kicks in, manage to fend off Overhaul, though. But the big episode, and I mean the big one, is coming next week for us dub watchers. And I'm like, oh shoot. And I'm like, man, I just know that based upon the stuff that we got in this episode, we're in for a real treat for the next episode, though. So I'm highly looking forward to that one, though. And oh gosh, this episode was really good from start to finish. Animation was good. Voice actors did a phenomenal job, and everything else in between, though. So it was a really good episode from start to finish, though. But that's pretty much it for this episode review. But y'all gotta let me know down in the comment section below, what all do you think about this episode as a whole, though? And are you looking forward to the next episode that comes after this, though? Because I know for a fact that I am. But that is all that I have for y'all for this week's episode review over My Hero Academia. So you really like this video, go ahead and hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell to keep up to date on all things My Hero Academia. With Eri just in sight, will Izuku manage to make that final push, or will Overhaul manage to stop Izuku once again with his new refined abilities? And will Izuku manage to push beyond his limits and use One for All to his full calling? We'll have to find out about this and more in next week's episode review called Infinite 100%. So remember, y'all, until whatever video I make next, go beyond. Plus Ultra!